stage right around the comic book. So this is pretty cool because we're kind of coming from all over the place, and these guys don't really know what slides I've concocted for them. So if you see them kind of looking over there to see the slides, it's kind of the first time they're seeing it as well. So we'll just kind of go through this together. What I wanted to do first is give a little bit of an overview. So the Divine Comedy, if you don't know, is a 700-year-old Italian epic poem written by Dante Alighieri. It's sort of widely considered one of the most influential works in Western culture, sort of fundamentally defined Western Europe's vision of the afterlife. It's an amazing piece of work. It was written in the Italian vernacular of the time, and that's important because it made it really accessible to everybody. We sort of think of Dante Alighieri and Shakespeare as these sort of stuffy philosopher types that, we're supposed to read them and study them and so forth. But for those guys, the reason they were writing in the vernacular was because their stuff was supposed to be read aloud, and they wanted everybody to enjoy it. And so for us, I think we've kind of seen Dante's works kind of been sort of treated in pop culture throughout the centuries, really, by artists and filmmakers and sculptors and painters and so forth. So it's kind of really been a great journey to follow that history and to hopefully be a small part of it. What Dante's main contribution to civilization really is that he was the first guy to map hell. And you can't open a copy of the book without seeing a map on the inside cover, a schematic that someone's drawn to sort of visualize what he wrote. He really describes it as a very real place with real geography and real characters right under our feet, all the way down to the center of the earth. And that's really what's I think captured people's imagination about it. So there's just been dozens and dozens of maps drawn over the centuries. And for us, that was the starting point for making a video game. He's really spun this incredible universe, and we wanted to bring that to life in sort of interactive 3D. Real quick, just a little bit about that map of hell. Limbo is the first circle of hell, Dante introduces the concept of the 9 circles of hell, the 7 deadly sins of purgatory. These are not concepts that really exist before him, which is pretty cool. So Limbo is the arrival. That's where the dead and the damned show up. Some of them end up staying there. Most of them move on to be judged to the lower circles of hell. Dante breaks hell into kind of 2 big chunks: the upper circles, which are the sins of the flesh, and the lower circles, which are the sins of malice. He's very specific in his philosophy about which sins are more offensive and which sins should be punished more severely. So lust is the least offensive sin. To be a liar, a hypocrite, and ultimately a traitor are the worst things you could possibly do, because they betray the very gift of reason that you have. And so even murderers are punished less severely in violence than, say, a politician or a hypocrite in the 8th circle of fraud. So that's a really cool worldview he has, which was out of step with his own time, and in many ways out of step with today. So we wanted to obviously stick to that, and his description of those circles for us just jumped out. Let's do 9 circles of hell in a level-based video game. Each circle would be kind of totally unique. Now that isn't to say we could just take the poem and add some computer art and call it a video game. There's a little more to it than that. So the big piece is how do you make it into a video game when the poem itself is actually pretty boring? So beyond all those cool descriptions, it's very, very difficult to get to it. Come on, who's read it? Oh, that's pretty good, actually. Okay. But not a lot happens, right? It's fascinating what these guys have to say when they describe what they see, because there's no conflict or drama. And we want to make an action game, and to make an action game, you have to have a reason to fight. And so that's where we basically wrote a new story that sits on top of the poem. It's an adaptation. But it really deals with the basic ideas of the story of the poem, which is that Dante's feeling bad about his life, and he's in love with Beatrice, who died a long time ago. She was a real-life character for him, as well as a fictional character. And the poem is about his journey, his sort of quest to get to her. And so we took that basic concept and built on it. We added in a bigger role for Lucifer. We added in a dark past for Dante, and ultimately created, a game that's full of action, conflict, and drama. And that all starts with the hero. So, this is Dante Alighieri, the poet and philosopher, and how he's depicted in history and remembered. And this is our Dante, and you can also see him in real life there. That's pretty cool. So, as you can see, we kind of took the original laurel leaf. Actually, I'm going to just quickly kick it over to Ash to just maybe spend 2 or 3 quick minutes kind of talking about the visual design of Dante.
guys, thanks for coming out. So yeah, Dante was an interesting sort of take for us because obviously, we're making a game. It is an action game. It wouldn't be so much fun kind of wandering through hell being a poet. And the poem itself, Dante really spends a lot of time observing hell through the guidance of Virgil. But with our hero, basically what we did was we kind of looked at Dante and said, well, let's make him a medieval knight. It was of the time, and we tried to look for some signature elements, and obviously the big thing about our game and our character, it's a story that's kind of told of his journey and innocence. The tapestry is a big element, the element that you see sewn into his cross. We looked at a lot of armor and a lot of sort of period correct stuff, and we adapted it a little bit to have its own kind of take for the game. But the laurel leaves itself, that what Jonathan was just mentioning, it's very typical in a lot of the images you see of Dante. We adapted that into the headgear, into something that was a lot more aggressive in terms of the profile. I mean, if you got head-butted by that thing, it would probably put a nasty dent in your head. The scythe was a pretty interesting thing. For us, internally, we kind of call it the Swiss Army knife of sort of weaponry, because the industrial design of it had to do a lot in the game. And if you go down and play the demo on the floor later on, you'll see, you'll get a bit of sense of that. Not only just a plain weapon, but he uses it to grapple and all kinds of other things. It can extend, it can expand, contract. The cross is another big element that Dante has, and it's very much an equal complement to the hack and slash element of the site. And that's, there's a big magic component that kind of comes out of the use of the cross. So, he's definitely not just a hack and slash guy. He's a big component of our game is the holy and the unholy aspect, or the righteous versus the unholy aspect of the game, which Jonathan can probably talk a little bit more to. So he's a holy warrior, but he's a pretty troubled soul. Definitely kind of an anti-hero.
And he fights for love. So cool, thanks, Ash. And I think the last thing about the hero that makes him unique is, again, that the Dante Beatrice love story in history is actually one of the great love stories of Western civilization. And he never got to be with her. He was actually married with kids with someone else, and he was exiled from Florence, and just never forgot this girl who died when she was 24, and literally writes this whole poem about trying to get to her in the afterlife. This is our Beatrice from the game, and Beatrice plays a big part in his journey. Cool. So, what we're going to do, that's just kind of an overview. What we're going to do going forward here for the next, half hour or so, because we want to definitely leave time for your questions, is really to kind of cover up these three big projects. And, obviously the video game is taking the lead.